from Animal Activists of Philly and Friends of Philly Zoo Elephants. Fixing a banner right now.
What, in your opinion, is the most important thing that people can do to help animals, and what is the least important?
I think for me, in my experience, and I'm 10 years as an activist, the most important thing is to get out in the public and educate people who are not already there. So right now what I'm doing today is I am at the zoo spreading the word about the Philadelphia Zoo elephants, and in addition to that I have vegan literature on my table available. So if people want to talk further, that's it. Now the least effective thing I think is doing things together, like with other vegans. I think that's important for social life, and I think it's important to have a community, but I don't consider that activism.
Like a potluck.
Like a potluck. Again, I think that's fun, and I think it's important to have a social event, but that's, in my opinion, that's not activism. You're singing to the choir. You're already vegan. Spending more time with more vegans is not activism. It might be fun, but in my opinion, it's not activism.
How did you get started?
I got started as an activist. My very first demonstration was way back in the 80s, believe it or not, before you were born. It was for the University of Pennsylvania Head Injury Lab, and I remember walking down Spruce Street with a bunch of people, hundreds of people, and it was protesting the Head Injury Lab. And there's still a video that you can watch, I think it's on YouTube, called Unnecessary Fuss, which talks about the experiments that they used to do back in the 80s. And after that, I got kind of involved with my career. I didn't do a lot of activism. I was vegetarian, but I wasn't vegan yet. And then I became really active in around 2002 when I started doing circus protests, when I learned about how the elephants and the other animals are treated.
How often are you out here?
I'm usually doing something every week, activism-wise, not always at the zoo, but usually there's a circus around, or there might be a film screening that I'm organizing, or doing vegan food sampling, doing a table somewhere where I'm giving free vegan food to people who are not vegan yet, to try to show them how good it is.
If you could hold on just a second, do you want to go sit down?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
This side's open. Watch my table.
Okay. What do you say to people who give you a hard time?
Usually I say nothing. I usually ignore them, because what people are trying to do, like right now, the zoo, we're at the zoo, there's people passing by. There might be one person out of 1,000 that wants to get a reaction from me and might say something like, oh, I love animals, I love to eat them. Usually I just ignore them. Or if I'm feeling like I need to make some sort of response, I'll say something like, thanks for the support, because that gets them really confused and they don't know what to think, and they're like, no, I'm not supporting you, I think you're bad, or whatever. So, but it's best just to ignore them, because they really want you to respond and they want to get a rise out of you.
How can kids get involved?
Kids can get involved in a lot of ways. I would say one thing is at your school. Like if you can organize something, and if you're not quite just the point where you want to organize something, you can check your local groups. There's probably a local activism group, as there is in Philadelphia, and all of my group is called Animal Activists of Philly, and all of our events are children friendly. Any child could come here and feel safe and have as much interaction with the public. Like you were here leafleting, doing an incredible job, but if it was somebody new that just wanted to hold a sign, that's fine too. So it's whatever you want to do. What
would be the website if someone wanted to find that?
The website is philly4animals.com, and it's spelled Philly, and the number 4 animals.com, and that will link you to my meetup site. And my meetup site is where I have the calendar, and that shows all the events. Great. So, for example, this weekend was a pretty busy weekend. We had a demonstration in Princeton yesterday. We also had ongoing campaign that's to boycott a pet store in Media, Pennsylvania. That's every Saturday. So there's always something to do.
Okay, and
Should I tell you a little bit about this, what's going on right now at the Philly Zoo, or do you have another question?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, just to give an update, because a lot of people think zoos are great, and I used to think so too a long, long time ago, because zoos like to say they're educational and they do a lot for conservation and they, love animals and they have their best interests. Well, when you scratch the surface and you find out a little bit more about zoos, you just know that all they are prisons for animals. And they really don't do much conservation. They are not educational. When people come to see animals, they're not doing anything that they do in the wild. So you're not learning about an animal's natural behavior. So what my particular campaign with the zoo started in 2005, and it focused on the elephants, because the elephants were being confined on a quarter-acre exhibit, and the zoo had made some plans to expand the exhibit to 2.5 acres and bring 10 elephants on board and have like a little breeding center. Well, they couldn't raise the money, so they decided, what are we going to do with these elephants? We're probably just going to let them die here. So I started a campaign called Friends of Philly Zoo Elephants, and I started demonstrating every week here at the zoo, raising awareness. And the zoo eventually did decide to send one elephant to a sanctuary and sent the other two to a breeding center. So the other two are still in limbo. One of them died when we started the campaign before. Petal died in June of 2008 of captivity-induced conditions. So that gives you a little background on what's going on today with the elephants.
You got that?
Okay, what animals does it hurt the most?
I don't think there's any way to really quantify that, but I think the whole thing with captivity is once the animals are in captivity, you can't really return them to the wild. So zoos in general, if they would transition to a rescue zoo and focus on a few, like a handful of animals versus the Philadelphia Zoo, which has 42 acres and over 1,000 different animals here, I would say there would be less suffering. Like there's a zoo in New Jersey called the Popcorn Park Zoo, and it does rescues. And I don't even really consider that a zoo. I consider that more of a sanctuary. It doesn't have the best physical environment for the animals. I think that they could use more space. But again, it's captivity. They're not going to ever duplicate what they get in the wild. So it's really just a matter of doing the best that you can do. Elephants and other large mammals seem to suffer physically, maybe more so than some other animals, like the smaller animals. What happens with elephants is they actually die. The number one cause of death of a captive elephant is conditions like foot disease and arthritis, and that is not found in the wild, has never been found in the wild. It's never killed one wild elephant as far as we know. In the wild, elephants are dying other than man-induced condition, things like poaching. They die of old age, of when their sixth set of teeth wears out, and they really just sort of waste away because they can't really eat anymore. So it's really like we humans, they just get old and the heart gives out or whatever. They're not dying of arthritis. What happens with elephants in zoos and in circuses is because they're standing around on hard surfaces and they can't move the way they move in the wild, which is miles and miles per day, their joints start to deteriorate. And so what happened with Petal, the elephant here that died in June of 2008, she had really severe arthritis and she had not been lying down to sleep. In the wild, elephants do lie down to sleep, but not for hours at a time. They nap. They sleep for about an hour or two at the most. What happened with Petal was she had not been lying down to sleep for years. That's a sure danger sign. The zoo was not monitoring her, and one night in June of 2008, it was a sweltering night, she collapsed because they had video monitoring, but they weren't watching it in real time, but they could play it back and see what happened. So about 3 o'clock in the morning, she collapsed. She couldn't get back up. And when an elephant or any large mammal like that, sometimes a horse too, collapses, doesn't lie down but actually collapses, it puts severe stress on the respiratory and the circulatory systems. So they need to get it back up. So when the zookeepers arrived at 7 o'clock in the morning, they tried to get her back up for 2 hours. They weren't successful and she died. When they did a necropsy of Petal, they found that she had severe arthritis in her hips, elbows, and knees. So it was preventing her from getting back up. She just physically couldn't do it. And that's the number one cause of death of elephants. So when you say like which ones suffer the most, I would say elephants are physically among the ones that manifest the most devastating symptoms.
What do they do with the ticket money here?
The ticket money goes for a lot of things like huge salaries, inflated salaries of zoo directors and employees. For example, the CEO, Victor Wan, makes over $300,000 a year, which is a lot of money for a nonprofit. And it goes for things like, you know, they have, I think, 3 different gift stands or gift stores here. They have swan boat rides. They have an indoor roller coaster. And they also just built a multi-million-dollar parking facility. So most of the money does not go towards upgrading the exhibits of the animals. Most of it goes towards making it better for the humans, like the traffic, you know, like the parking lot. They just built that multi-million-dollar parking lot.
Still tax deduction.
And are they still a tax deduction?
Yes, it's a nonprofit. It's tax deductible. It's considered a nonprofit, even though it's a private entity. They get a lot of public funding. They get over $1 million every year in capital funding from the federal and from our taxes. They also get free sewage and water from the city of Philadelphia, so like they don't have to pay for that. That comes out of our money. In addition to that, they rent this entire space for something like $1 a year. So they're subsidized incredibly by the city and the state, even though they're a private company, organization, which means we can't get a lot of the records that if they were considered a public entity, we could get, you know, medical records for the animals, things like that, but because they're not, we can't. We're very limited into what we can get.
Do they sell food inside?
They do. They have snack bars. They have you know, icy stands. They have all kinds. It's like an amusement park, really.
It's meat, though. They sell meat.
Oh, it's meat. It's totally. There's nothing. You probably couldn't find anything vegan in there. I would think. But you really have to think of a zoo as an amusement park, where the animals are part of the amusement, and they're there for you to look at. And I've seen children, you know, throw things at animals that are sleeping because they want to see them do something. They're bored. The peacocks here are the only animals that are really allowed to, I guess, roam free, such as they are. I've seen little kids chase them, throw things at them. I mean, it's not, the environment is not fostering respect for animals in any way here.
Come up with something else. No dead air.
Do we have more time?
Yeah, a couple minutes.
A couple more time?
About 15 minutes left.
Well, 10. There might be a delay.
Sorry.
If you weren't here, what else would you be doing?
Yeah, if you weren't here, what else would you be doing?
Oh, well, I would be doing, I'm just like anybody else. I have a really busy life. I work full time. I have a family. I have dogs. But I feel like activism is so important that I make time for it. And that's something that I would really, you know, encourage people to try to do every week if possible. Or if you can't do it every week, try to do it once a month. Try to do something that gets you outside of your comfort zone and into the public eye, because staying at home and watching TV and being on the computer and posting on Facebook and signing petitions, that's really not activism. Like, you really need to get out into the public and do outreach and pick a cause that you're most passionate about. Like for me, I'm kind of focusing on animals in circuses and zoos for whatever reason. I don't know if it's because I had the good fortune to go to Africa back in the 90s.
Really?
And I saw elephants in the wild.
Wow.
I saw how they live, and then seeing them in captivity is just sickening, because they're not the same animal. So I feel like people who think they're going to a zoo or a circus to see an elephant or a tiger, they're not. They're seeing what is a kind of a caricature of an animal that does nothing natural. So my challenge is to people who might be listening to this is, if if you want to, make the world a better place, pick something that you're passionate about and implement. Like, even if it's just, coming for an hour and leafleting vegan starter kits during a lunch hour or something. Even if it's something like that, you don't know what difference you're going to make. You don't know what seeds you're planting. You don't know what, someone else might see you doing that and think, wow, I guess I could do that too, So you can really make a big difference